All right, so we are recording. So I will go ahead and get us officially started. Thanks everybody for being here. My name's Danny Lauer. I'm the Assistant Director and Coordinator of Adult and Alumni Career Resources here at Grand Valley's Career Center. So we have folks coming into the Zoom room. So as you're coming in, we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, sharing your name, your graduation year, and why this session was interesting to you. We want you to know that this is a partnership program with Alumni Relations and the Career Center, and we're here to support you as alumni in your lifelong learning and professional growth. So programs like this are just one way that we get to do that. So I am so pleased to introduce our webinar facilitator, Shaina Lane. Shaina is a certified professional career coach. She's an executive coach, among all the other certifications she holds. She is also the founder of Premier Professional Coaching. She's a published author and, of course, a proud GV alum. So we are so lucky to have her here to share her story and her expertise with us today. Before I turn it over to Shaina, just want to share a few Zoom etiquette rules. Like I said at the beginning, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll share this recording with all of you after the webinar concludes. We'd love for you to be respectful of others participating in the workshop today. So if you need to conduct any business outside of Zoom, please make sure to mute your microphone, turn off your camera before doing so. We will have some time at the end for questions, but feel free to drop those questions that you might have during the session in the chat, and we'll address them at the end. So, okay, that's all for me. Shaina, I will hand it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I remember where I was when I decided what I was going to be for the rest of my life. I was on a softball field at Godwin Heights High School, and I was sliding into second base, and I scraped up my knee and got back to the dugout, and some nice guy came over and he cleaned up my knee and bandaged it up. And I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm Jade. I'm your athletic trainer." And I said, "Oh, what's an athletic trainer?" And he said, "Well, we watch sports and we take care of injuries." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I like sports. I'm curious about injuries. I think that's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life." Up until that point, I thought I was going to go to Michigan State for veterinary school. But turns out I applied to Grand Valley. I went there, got a degree in physical education and a double emphasis in athletic training and fitness wellness. I think that they actually retired that degree. I think it's movement science now. But anyways, today you're going to hear the story about how I pivoted at least 7 times in my career, and I'm not doing anything related to athletic training anymore. So fancy that. But through all the career twists and turns and ups and downs, I hope if you get motion sickness, you brought some Dramamine with you today. You're going to learn that none of my education or experience or anything that I've done relates to graphic design. And I'm going to prove that to you with my next slide about my career path. Um, the graphics on the slide look like they probably were done by a kindergartner. I shouldn't say that. It's an insult to kindergartners. But here we go. All right, so let's walk through the journey. First, okay, let me move my screen around so I can see what I'm doing here. As I mentioned, went to Grand Valley, got a degree in movement science, athletic training, went down to Auburn and did my master's in higher education administration with a minor in sports management. And I did that in case I didn't want to be an athletic trainer down the road. I would have a place to pivot to, and I could work in athletic administration in a college or university. Funny, I'm not even doing that anymore. But when I was interviewing for jobs out of grad school, my first interview was with a PT clinic that was just north of Atlanta. And they wanted me to do physical therapy clinic in the mornings, outreach athletic training to the high schools in the afternoon. And the guy said to me, "Well, I don't know what we're going to pay this job yet, but I'm thinking the salary is going to be somewhere between $26,000 and $28,000 a year." Okay. I just spent 6 years in school. I've got a master's degree, $50,000 in student loan debt, and you want to pay me $26,000 to $28,000 a year. My brother, who had dropped out of high school and was working at a factory making 31, no student loan debt. And so I was like, what did I just do with my life? How is this going to work? So I ended up getting a job at St. Joseph's Candler Hospital. Did that advance? Let me make sure. Sorry, I've got big old screen. Trying to see. Okay. So got a job with St. Joseph's Candler. That was my first job out of grad school. That was down in Savannah. It was mornings in a clinic and then afternoons out at a high school. I was only there for about 4 weeks before Todd, my mentor at Grand Valley, called me up and he's like, "Hey, my assistant's leaving. Would you like to come back to Grand Valley and be my assistant?" And at that point, I was really struggling with the DMV down there. They were not wanting to give me a Georgia driver license. And I had been there 5 days in a row at 7 a.m. and they kept sending me away to get something else. And I was like, leaving the DMV, I was in tears. I was like, they're never going to let me drive in Georgia. And Todd calls and is like, "Hey, you want to come back to Michigan?" I was like, "Yes, please." They let me drive in Michigan. Um, so, anyways, short story long, came back to Grand Valley and was the assistant athletic trainer for a couple of years. My third year back, Todd was diagnosed with brain cancer and had to step away from work and do treatment. So I became the interim head athletic trainer and was primarily responsible for 19 varsity sports at the time. I think we had 600 student athletes. I took care of football, men's and women's basketball. At least I traveled with them, but I had responsibility for everything. And that year, I worked 361 days out of the year and 80 to 90 hours a week. I think I was making 40 grand a year doing that and thought, you know what? This isn't sustainable. We had just got a new head basketball coach. He was having 4-a-day practices on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. And so while most of those kids were local, they couldn't go home and see their families. And I thought, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. What else can I do? And so I had a friend from grad school who actually did an athletic training residency right after grad school down at Emory in Atlanta. She told me about the residency, and I thought, seems kind of great. They take your athletic trainer out of the traditional setting, teach you to work in a physician's office, like a physician assistant, and you get your surgical first assist credential. So I was able to assist in surgery, see patients in clinic with the docs. Went down there and did that for a year. When my residency was up, I found a job in, sorry, I'm really not good with keeping up with my graphics here. um, did the residency, got a job at Hovis Orthopedic Clinic in Knoxville. And at the time, it wasn't a new concept to have athletic trainers working in an orthopedic clinic, but it wasn't as well known. So some practices were still struggling with how to have an athletic trainer and a PA working together in the same practice. And we had that challenge at Hovis Ortho Clinic in Knoxville. So I was there for about 9 months. And then the physician and the clinic director from Emory called me back and said, "Hey, you want to come back and be the clinic lead and help run the residency program?" And I was like, "Sure. Yeah, that sounds great." Back to where it all started. Absolutely. So came back, was the clinic lead for a couple of years, helped run the residency program. And then my clinic manager left and I was promoted into the clinic manager role. Did that for a couple of years, was promoted into the associate administrator role for the school of medicine department in orthopedics. Excuse me. Did that for a couple of years. And then my boss left and they rolled orthopedics up under neuroscience and brain health. And at that point, they had a leader that, let's just say, valued control more than outcomes. And her first order of business was to eliminate my position. So they say you never really arrive as a leader until your job is eliminated at some point. So she eliminated my position. But the good thing was the chairman of the department, um, I he's probably not on this call, so I'll tell you, I called him everybody's favorite grandpa because he was amazing and just super sweet and not the typical orthopedic surgeon. But if you know him and you tell him, I'm going to deny that I said that. So he was sweet. He said, "You know what? Shayna's been here for 10 years. She's been promoted 3 times. Every position's run better when she's been in it. We'll have a job for her as long as she needs it." So he couldn't stop her from eliminating my position, but he did keep her from throwing me out on the streets while I looked for a new job. So it was nice to have a little bit of security there as I looked for a new job. Was applying for clinic manager positions, couldn't find anything. I had 10 years of experience. I was speaking at regional and national conferences about our clinical staffing model because it was the gold standard. I even paid a professional resume writer $1,100 to write my resume. Still no luck, no hits. So I came to this point where I had to figure out, what do I want to be when I grow up again? How do I reinvent myself? Where do I pivot now? I'm having no luck finding a job doing the thing that I've been doing really well for 10 years. And it turns out that what I truly loved about my career as a manager and a leader was helping develop other people. It wasn't necessarily operations management. So I looked into it and ended up seeing where there was a few clinic operations manager jobs out there on all the job boards. There were tons of HR positions that were doing the thing that I wanted to do. So I ended up studying for my SHRM CP exam, which is the HR certification exam. Took that, and then I had to escape ortho. Things were getting pretty tenuous there with my leader, and she really just wanted me out. So I pivoted to a different department at Emory, the Division of Animal Resources, which was really hard. That's where we do animal research. And as an animal lover, I wasn't quite sure how that would fit with my moral and ethical code. But it was good for me because I learned a lot about animal research and how humane it is. Um, it was still a challenge. So anyways, I was an HR generalist for the Division of Animal Resources. I had a friend that worked in HR at Craneware, and as she was hiring an assistant, she said, "Hey, do you want to come work at Craneware for me and really get your hands on a lot of HR stuff?" Sounded like a really good opportunity. So I moved over to Craneware, and I would 10 out of 10 not recommend ever working for a friend. Did not go well at all. But I stuck it out for about 2 years. And then our chief people officer ended up promoting me to an employee success consultant role. So here's where I had the opportunity to do what I got into HR for in the first place. I was responsible for employee experience, learning and development, leadership development. Really could, it was a new job. She kind of created that job for me. So I could make it what I wanted to make it and do the things that I love doing. So that was a pretty great shift. And after a couple of years, I feel like a trend as I'm saying this out loud. Every couple of years, I needed a change, either a growth opportunity or a change. Um, I was feeling like my career was slowly dying there. I wasn't able to do the things that I wanted to do, yet I was so productive. I kept getting responsibilities piled on. So at that point, I was kind of like, I need some career CPR here, something to breathe some life back into what I'm doing, because it's starting to kind of shift away from why I got into this employee success role. So I got my Gallup Clifton Strengths coaching certification so I could bring that to the organization and use that as a tool to continue developing our leaders and our employees. And um, loved it. I asked the chief people officer, I said, do you mind if I use the certification on the side and coach people as kind of a side hustle? She was like, yeah, I don't care. As long as you do your job here, that's fine. So I did that. I started Premier Professional Coaching back in 2019, and I worked there and at Craneware for a few years. And then I got a couple other coaching certifications, as Danny mentioned earlier, probably more than should be legal, but I have high learner in my strengths. So I just learn things. Um, but what I learned while I was doing my business I left Craneware in 2021 and I was just doing Premier Professional Coaching. And what I learned there is I don't love business development. I don't love selling the work. I love doing the work. And so I made just enough to pay my bills and get by. And then a job opened up at Spartan Nash that I had seen. It was a HR business partner role. And the opportunity, the vision that the hiring manager had for that role was to coach and develop leaders, which is what I love to do. So I applied and I got hired. And about, I think it was 2 weeks later, the CHRO resigned. And about 3 weeks after that, my boss resigned. So the whole hierarchy above me collapsed. And with my leader leaving, and she was the one who had the vision for my role, that vision kind of went away too. Well, it just so happens that in March, before I took that job in April, I spoke at a conference on career development using your strengths. And I met a couple of ladies there. We sat together every day. We had lunch and dinner together. July of 2022, Sonia calls me up and she says, "Hey, we've got a job that I think that you'd be perfect for." And I was like, "No, I just started at Spartan Nash. Don't tell me that." And she was like, "Let me just send you the job description." I was like, "Oh, that's how this goes, isn't it?" So she was the VP of HR at Accent Care, and she sent me the job description for a senior leadership development specialist. And the job description was like, I couldn't have written a more perfect job description for myself. It was amazing. And I was like, oh, I can go do the work and not sell the work every day. This is awesome. And everybody I interviewed with was like, oh, you're going to work for Lori. We love Lori. Lori's great. We love Lori. And so I was like, this is a no brainer. I think I got to do it. So I Jumped to Accent Care after about 4 months at Spartan Nash. I was not proud of that quick transition, but really the job wasn't going in the direction I thought it was when I started anyways. So I've been at Accent Care since. And after my first year there, our first year actually, we got all of our leadership programs stood up, built, having some great success, and then started the decline because now the business isn't ready for anything that they want us to do, right? We kept putting leadership strategy forward and they kept saying, oh, we're just not ready for it yet. Not to mention, probably 2 months after I started Accent Care, our CHRO resigned. 6 months after that, the CEO resigned. And so I've been there 3.5 years. We've gone through two CEOs, three CHROs, and I support hospice, the entire SVP structure has turned over as well. So much leadership churn and burn that we haven't been able to get a strategy going. So started to feel a little bit stuck at Accent Care as well after 3.5 years. So probably about 6 weeks ago, I made the decision to resign, and I'll be finishing up at Accent Care at the end of December and just working on premier professional coaching again. Um, so that takes us through my career trajectory from 1997 to current, to present day, future day in December of 2025. And what I want you to take from this, what I hope you pick up in this story, your takeaways, don't wait for somebody else to write your story. What I realized as my job was being eliminated at Emory is the jobs just always found me. I never really had to look for a job. I didn't have to be intentional. I didn't have to have a career strategy because the jobs just kind of showed up. But when my job was being eliminated, now I was stuck and I didn't know what to do. And I see clients in that position all the time. They come to me and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how to do the next thing because everything's just always showed up. Or, I want to progress, but my manager hasn't told me what I can do yet. You're waiting for somebody else to write your story. You need to pick up the pen and start writing your own story. Since I took my SHRM CP exam, I've been intentionally building my career to where I am now. So every step has been intentional and I'm doing the work that I love doing. The second thing would be to know your North Star. When I work with clients, we work on finding their North Star, and it's usually a combination of your core values, your top core values, your career and life needs and wants. So, knowing what you need to have in your life will help guide you as you make those career decisions. For example, if you say to me, Shayna, family is the most important thing, that is my top core value. That is non negotiable. I need to be at my kids' soccer games after work every day, every other day, however often they have soccer games. And you're looking for a new job, and there's this job out there that sounds really great. It's enticing, it's a big salary number, it's good benefits, it's flexibility, but you got to travel 70% of the time. Now you're not going to make it to those kids' soccer games, right? So that North Star keeps you tied to what is really most important to you. You might say financial stability is my top core value. So you know what? I got to take this job because I need to be the provider for the family, but that's okay because that is my core value. So knowing your North Star will help guide you as you're making difficult career decisions. And then three is strengthen your network. All of the best jobs that I've had have come from somebody in my network, somebody who knew who I was, knew what I could do, knew what I wanted to do, and put me in touch with the right person. So work on building your network and build it before you need it. What happens a lot of times is we start to think about, gosh, I've got to get out of this job. Now I need to lean into my network and I'm reaching out because I need something. And people can see right through that, right? So pour into your network, invest in your network before you need something. You'll find that people are generally pretty willing to pick up and help. But make sure that you're leaning into your network. So those are the three big takeaways that I've learned throughout my career transition that I hope to pass on to you today. And I know that was a pretty quick and dirty overview. I Danny had sent me all of your great questions, so I am super excited to get to the questions that you all submitted. Thank you for that. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through them slide by slide. If you submitted a question and you've got follow-ups for me, go ahead and type it in the chat. Danny said she was going to keep an eye on that for me. And then if something else comes up, feel free to put that in the chat. We can get to it if we've got a few minutes at the end. But I'm going to kind of go through these quickly because there were so many good questions and I want to try and get to all of them. So thank you all for that. Um, First question, what does an epic career look like for a middle-aged woman? And this may or may not be the answer you're looking for, but an epic career is one that you are happy with. And that's going to look different for every single person. Some people, an epic career is being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. To somebody else, it could be taking a passion project and turning it into a business. For somebody else, it could be being a healthcare provider and saving lives every day. It could feel like a pretty epic career. But at the end of the day, it's one that you can look back on and be like, yeah, I did that. And that was pretty darn cool. I really enjoyed that. So, no specific definition, but other than what makes you happy, what you enjoy doing, and what has you feeling fulfilled. All right. This one's a long one, and there were two that were kind of similar, so I grouped them together. I won't read all of that, but really career advice for growth in the public sector or government. Somebody's working with a bunch of people who are younger and may not be retiring soon, but still want to contribute more in the organization or hit a growth plateau in a small company. That was kind of like me at Craneware, and I could only grow so much in a small company, and ended up having to leave. And sometimes that happens. And I know people in the government sector, you've got really good tenure and security based on longevity. And so there's a specific promotion process, but I'm going to get to that in just a second. So growth can mean a couple of things here. When people say, I want career growth, one of the first things I'll usually ask is, what does that mean to you? Is that just increased earning potential? Is that skill development? Is that role advancement? What does growth mean to you? And so that's something that's worth thinking about. But my best advice for that is to figure out the next role that you want and start developing towards it. So you never know when it might open up. Um, you mentioned your superiors being young, but if they are young, they're probably looking for the same kind of growth you are. And they may not be in that spot long because they've got growth goals too. They might win the lottery tomorrow and disappear to a remote island, never to be heard from again. They could have a health issue that suddenly takes them out of the workforce. It's funny timing because when I let Accent Care, I let my boss know about 6 weeks ago that I was resigning, and that day or the day after, I had a conversation with a woman in another department who ultimately wants to be in the type of role that I'm in, and so she wanted me to mentor her. And she's like, I don't want to I don't want you to think I'm taking your job or anything. I just like that's something I want to do down the road someday. I like what I'm doing now, but I just want to make sure I'm prepared. And little did she know I had resigned. We hadn't told anybody yet. So that job's going to open up much sooner than what she thought it was. So I always tell people develop in the direction that you want to go. Identify the role, see what skills gaps there are. Are there any behaviors? Is there any experience or exposure you need to be the best candidate when that role opens up? So position yourself so it'd be really hard for somebody to say no. There's always some sort of development that you can do to prepare yourself for that next role. Develop in that direction, and then make sure that you're the best candidate when that role opens up. And again, some point you may have to leave the organization, but that's where leaning back on your values will tell you a lot, right? So is loyalty to this company, or do they have a benefits package that's really hard to let go of? Is that more valuable than your career growth? Or is career growth the primary driver for you? And those benefits are nice, but they're not going to keep you there. So that's where core values really come into play. And then about the government thing. So I have a friend that worked at the CDC and then she worked at the FDA and not anymore. But she progressed rapidly through the government kind of promotion. I know you've got like specific levels that you can move through. And the thing that I've learned from Kathleen is never be afraid to ask. That girl will ask anybody any question. It does not phase her. She is not worried. She always says, you know what? The worst they can say is no. But she asks. And she has had a pretty great kind of growth trajectory up until now. But so that's what I would say. Don't be afraid to ask. Figure out the role that you want to go for and then develop towards it. All right. How can I use storytelling myself to help take authentic ownership of my career. So the coach in me wants to ask a lot more questions about that. So if you're here and you want to put in the chat, like, what does authentic ownership of your career mean to you? That would be helpful. But in the meantime, I'm going to try to address what I think it means. So storytelling to me speaks to your elevator pitch, who you are. And I would say you always want to come up with a pitch or a speech or um, uh, something that will resonate with your target audience. So who are you speaking to? Is it for a hiring manager? Is it a networking event? Um, One of the things that I will work with clients on is to not just talk about what you do, but why you do it and how you do it. Because what you do doesn't separate you from anybody. There's hundreds of thousands of people that are out there doing the same tasks, the same responsibilities, the same type of job as you. Why you do it and how you do it is what differentiates you. So make sure when you're working into your storytelling, or if it's a networking elevator pitch, you work in the why and the how, because that's your differentiator. And then for authentic ownership, what I'm guessing we might mean here is owning our successes. And it's something that I see a lot of clients struggle with as we do interview prep is they don't want to talk about, they don't want to brag. They want to be very humble and they want to say, oh, my team did this and my team accomplished that. And they have a real hard time saying, but this is what I did. So if you have a team and maybe let's say your team achieved their sales goals, what did you do to help facilitate that? What was the role you played in that? So did you realign territories to make travel easier? Did you streamline the sales process? Did you ride along with them to help with different account or difficult accounts? So think about the role that you played and speak to that when it comes to the successes. If you want to still give team success, give that team credit for that. Talk about your role in it. And hopefully that makes that a little bit easier. So hopefully I answered that question. How do I get over imposter syndrome? I wish I could tell you this is as easy as flipping a light switch, but it's not. It's usually a 6-month coaching process, but the first thing is to really unpack like what's driving the imposter syndrome. Why do you feel that way? What's going on in your head that makes you feel like you're not worthy of a seat or you're qualified or that somebody's going to find out that you're a fraud? There's usually an underlying belief there that's kind of keeping you stuck in that imposter syndrome, and we call those limiting beliefs. But once you've identified that limiting belief, you've got to work on shifting it to something more productive. So a couple of things you can work on with that is like a reframe, an if or then statement. So being able to say to yourself, if they promoted me to this position, then I'm ready and I'm qualified, right? Instead of thinking that we're not ready or we're not qualified. If they promoted me, then I'm qualified. Um, if I'm hitting my monthly sales numbers, then I'm not going to worry about the ebb and flow of the week to week. So think of a reframe that could help you. Or there's mantras. So, for example, I see leaders will get stuck with a big problem. It feels overwhelming. It's too much to tackle. I don't know where to start. I don't think I'm going to be able to make enough progress. I just can't do it. One step at a time. That's a mantra. You just think to yourself, one step at a time. Or I am enough. I can do this. One of my favorites is I can do hard things. I think about that every time I go out for a run. That's replay in my head every time I run. I can do hard things. Um, if you have a mantra, I would love for you to pop it in the chat because who knows, somebody could really benefit from hearing what you repeat, what you have on repeat in your head that helps you when you're feeling stuck. So let's share it. Let's lift each other up a little bit if you can. That would be great. Tips or suggestions on successful networking. So I know this is some introvert on the call that's trying to test me because this question usually comes from an introvert. And I know this because I am 1,000% introvert as well. Networking makes me queasy and it makes my palms sweat. But we all need to do it, right? We have to strengthen our network. So the extroverts usually are the ones that are networking and they don't even know they're networking because they're so good at it. But do the networking that works for you. If you connect better on a one-to-one basis, do that. I'd say if you like large events and working a room, do that. Find conferences or associations like meetings in your industry that you can go to and talk to all the people, extroverts. If you're an introvert, go to those same events, but look for the person that's sitting awkward and alone at a table and talk to that one person. Um, or get adopted by an extrovert and let them introduce you to people. I have lots of extrovert friends and I love taking them to networking events because they do all the talking and then I can chime in when I feel like there's something I can relate to. But other opportunities are identifying like a handful of your dream employers and start connecting with people on LinkedIn. Ask for a coffee chat or a virtual coffee chat just to learn more about the organization. We call those informational interviews. I just want to learn more about the organization, the culture, what it's like to work there to see if I want to keep that organization on my top 10 list of places to work for. If they host local events, show up and help out. The best time, again, to network is before you need to. So make sure that you're tapping into your network, providing value where you can, so that when you do need to lean into your network for help, they're there and they're standing ready to point you in the right direction. That being said, people are usually pretty happy to help out. So if you call somebody up with a need to say, hey, who do you know at this organization? I'm trying to get in. I would love to work there. Would love to know if you have any connections that you can connect me with. So there's some ideas, hopefully, for the folks who are struggling with networking like I do. Danny, I can't see the time either. So if you can just kind of keep me honest with how much time we have, that would be great. Thanks. Okay, let's see how to get unstuck and find my growth and find growth in my career in physical therapy. Again, the coach in me would ask, what do you want to do? And where are you getting stuck? So oftentimes in healthcare, like people max out. Let's say you're a doctor of physical therapy and you're operating at the top of your credential, but you've still got more in you. What's next? Maybe you've got a full client load, your clients are successful, they're happy, and you need a new challenge. Is it a new specialty certification? Is that what you're looking for? Is it a leadership role? Is it starting your own practice? Is it going into teaching? So a lot of questions there. But I would say first determine what you want to do and then think about the steps that you need to take to do it. When I made my transition from clinic operations to HR, I had to look at, okay, what certifications am I going to need? How do I prove that I'm credible in this community or in this industry? And that was taking the SHRM certification. And then I actually just responded to a LinkedIn message today from an old connection that I knew from 3 years ago. He's looking at transitioning to HR, and he reached out and said, like, how do I get started? I said, figure out which certification you want to take, and then talk to everybody you know in HR. Learn about the industry, learn about the profession. Um, so I think really number one is think about what you want to do, the steps to get there, and then what do you want to do? So I think this is where a lot of people get stuck is they don't really know what they want to do, and we prioritize the things that we want. So if you don't have a strong desire to say, let go into teaching or to open your own physical therapy practice, you might be sitting here in a year saying, how do I grow in physical therapy? Because you haven't prioritized it because it's not a strong enough want yet. So is the want strong enough? Um, yeah, I think that's what I got for that one. All right. What would you tell a mid-career leader who feels like it's impossible to make a difference? I would tell you it is possible. You can make a difference. And quite frankly, somebody that would ask that question, it tells me that you care enough that you probably are making a difference. Um, so without knowing more about the challenge at hand, it's hard to offer recommendations, but I think maybe ask for feedback or inventory your wins and acknowledge where you're successful already. So I bet you're probably making more of a difference than you think you are. Um, then I would say define what does making a difference look like? Maybe people really appreciate you, they feel like you're encouraging and they enjoy working with you, but to you making a difference means I want to get business results. Like I want to see the needle move on what I'm doing and I don't feel like I can do that. So figuring out what making a difference means, be able to define that. But take a good hard look in the mirror and say, now what's getting in my way of doing that? Whatever it is that you want to do. So one of the books that I like, I think it's Boundaries for Leaders. They talk about as a leader, you are ridiculously in charge. And I love that phrase, you are ridiculously in charge. So have you done everything you can do to make a difference where you're at? Get curious about what you don't know. There was a couple of years ago, I was doing a 360 review or assessment with a leader who was an SVP at a large organization. And she thought she was a servant leader who was doing everything she could do to invest and develop in her team. And her lowest score on that 360 was coaches and develops the team for career and professional growth. And she was rocked because she was like, I'm always available. I'm working tons of hours. I answer all their questions. And I said, well, what kind of career development conversations are you having with your team? And she paused and she said, I'm not. Nobody's ever had that conversation with me. So I wouldn't even know where to begin. So it was a very clear example of where, number one, we can't expect the people around us and above us to model leadership well. But she didn't get curious about what else she needed to do as a leader to impact how her employees felt about career development in their roles. So I'd say get curious and figure out what you don't know, and then figure out a way to know that and move in that direction. So if you feel like the leadership above you is limiting your potential, what conversations have you had with them about that? Have you made the best business case possible? And are you asking for the right things? So just a few things to think about if you're in that situation. I'm just curious on the tools you use to figure out your path. So I think that would be the three takeaways that I had put after I shared my story. Don't wait, write your own story. Don't wait on somebody else to invest in you. You pick up the pen and start writing. Know your North Star, your values, your career and life wants and needs. Be very clear on this because it'll decide or guide your decision making. And then three, build meaningful connections with your network. This is how you land the best jobs. And those are pretty universal across every industry. So that's what I would share. Let's see, what was the hardest parts about moving from one company to the next, if voluntary? I had to really think about this one. I've always enjoyed the learning curve that comes along with a job change. So learning new things wasn't a challenge for me. And I think that's what I hear from most of my clients as the biggest challenge is it feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose. There's so much information and I feel like I need to be productive immediately. And I think that was probably the hardest thing for me at Accent Care is there wasn't a lot of work to be done right off the bat. And I think it was a good 6 months in that I was telling my boss, like, are you sure you want to still pay my salary? Because you're paying me a lot of money and I'm not doing anything. Like I want to be productive. And so if an organization hires you and they don't have a good onboarding plan to get you up to speed and feeling productive soon, that was my biggest challenge. Let me see, was there anything else? Yeah, I think the only other thing was um, trying not to come into an organization like the Tasmanian devil and like whip up a bunch of changes. So being able to be patient and learn the culture, learn the organization, learn the people before saying, oh, we've got to change this and this and this and this. Because that sounds like you're calling somebody's baby ugly. You don't want to do that. So those were the hardest things for me. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully you don't get stuck in that spot for too long. All right, I'm stuck in a role that's plateaued. What are the smartest first steps to take if I want to grow without jumping ship immediately? So I would think about creating your own strategic plan. So decide what you want to do. Again, where do you want to grow? What do you want to do? What's the job that you're targeting? Um, Start nurturing your network. Identify any skills or behaviors or experience or exposure that you need to be successful in that next role. And moreover, like stay engaged with your current role because the last thing you want to do is check out and leave that job with burned bridges. Because you never know when you may need to come back and work there or work with somebody that did work there and they're like, oh yeah, Shayna checked out early. Like she was, gonzo the last 6 months that she was actually here. So make sure that you're still engaged there. But there are things that you can do to start, like again, leveraging your network, developing your own strategic career growth plan or professional development plan to know how you need to grow so that when you're ready, you're ready. Let's see. These two were similar. What's your advice for reigniting passion in a job that feels stale but still pays the bills? And how do you get unstuck? I'm curious if you can actually do this. I feel like this is kind of like when you fall out of love, it's real hard to fall back into it. Right? Or is that just me? I don't know. But if you want to get that loving feeling back in your job, I would say think about what you love most about your job. What energizes you? Or what did energize you at the start? Can you do more of that in your role? Are there projects or committees that you can lead that will challenge you professionally and allow for some growth? Is there something new and different out there that you want to try that maybe you could pitch to your leadership? Hey, I've got this idea. Here's the business case. Could we do this? If what the thing that you loved about that job was maybe getting to do new things or be innovative or be creative. Um, at one of my previous jobs at Craneware, I wanted to start an employee advisory council. I had never done it before, but it seemed like it was needed and it was a good idea and there would be a benefit. And it gave me another challenge that, again, supported employee engagement and in the employee experience. So I pitched it to the senior leaders. I got their buy-in, and we did it. Um, there are jobs out there that'll pay the bills, but no one's stuck. So if the job is not terrible, not wonderful, you get to decide how long you stay in that environment. That is up to you. But if your top value is financial stability, maybe it's worth it that you stay there. If that's tapping into that core value of financial stability, maybe you got to stay there. But if you feel unsettled, maybe financial stability really isn't one of your core values. Maybe it is something else that you haven't really dug deep enough for yet. And that's why you feel unsettled in that role. So, is one of your top values personal growth or making a difference? But you've got to decide what's best for you. Let's see. What signs told you it was time to make a big pivot, and how did you minimize the risks? Well, the first big pivot was when my job got eliminated. So I didn't have a choice on that one. um, but the second one, I think it was when I just wasn't happy and I had tried everything that I could do to make the job what I needed it to be fulfilled. And I just wasn't getting anywhere anymore. And I think that's when it made sense to me to make the pivot. Minimizing the risks. Let's think. So when I left Craneware, I had my business on the side. So there was some risk minimization there, right? I knew I'd still have a little bit of an income. When I shifted into HR, I got the HR certification before leaving one job and finding another one. So again, it's part of that preparation to the one that was like, it was the last slide about if you're not ready to move on yet, how do you still prepare yourself? So this is kind of maybe a little bit similar, but yeah, the signs where I just wasn't happy and I couldn't figure out a way to make myself happy in the role. Then I just decided it was time to go. If I couldn't do the work that was felt meaningful to me and that helped me feel fulfilled, it was time to go. Let's see. How do you explain a demotion to your network and future employers? I'd say as honestly as you can. If the job you were in wasn't a right fit, maybe say, I was in a job that wasn't a good fit for me, and I took a role that was more closely aligned to my skill set. I don't think you need to say whether or not you were given a choice. But if you recognize that maybe you have some skills gaps between maybe being a leader and an individual contributor, call it out and say, what I realized is I wasn't ready to lead a team yet, and I wanted to spend some time developing my competency in X, Y, or Z. And so here's what I've done to prepare and strengthen my readiness for the next role. I know we've got some HR folks on the call too. I've seen those names pop up. So if you have any more suggestions from your HR position, feel free to chime in. Would love to hear what you've got to say about that. But I'd say be as honest as you can. I definitely wouldn't lie about it, but I think there are some things that maybe you don't have to say. And I think one of the biggest things is, what did you learn from it? Because employers, when they hire people, they don't necessarily care so much about mistakes that you've made. You'll get that in behavioral interviewing, right? They want to hear about, like, when was the time that you made a mistake? What did you learn from it? And what did you do since then? So if you were demoted, what did you learn from that opportunity? How have you used that to grow as a professional? And I would emphasize that. Okay, let's see. I think we've got seven more. We're on a roll. can I successfully build my career if I keep changing the specialization? So different areas of psychology that I'm interested in, or not until I'm able to be decisive about where to head, or is that part of the journey? I'd say D, all of the above. You can be successful. I went from sports medicine to HR to keynote speaker. So those aren't even related. So at least you're playing in the same ballpark with some of these. But I think like in HR, you can be an HR generalist and you can do all things HR, benefits, employee relations, organizational development, or you can specialize in your favorite area. I just do comp. I just do payroll. I just do benefits. Um, I think if moving quickly to your target job is important, then spending time to think about what you really want to do and where you really want to specialize and being decisive is going to be the best. But if you told me that like I could only have one flavor of ice cream for the rest of my life, I'd want to sample all the flavors to make sure I'm picking the right one that I could only have for the rest of my life. So some people need to experience the different specialties before they can really make a decision on, all right, where do I want to land? So something to think about, generalist or specialist. Um, and do you need more information before you can really decide that you want to specialize? Or if you have trouble deciding you want to specialize, is specializing the right thing for you, or do you want to do a little bit of all of it? I hope nobody ever gives me that ultimatum of I can only have one flavor of ice cream for the rest of my life. I'd probably die. Just saying. Um, what do you do when you're trying to develop yourself as a professional and you can't get meaningful feedback from your supervisors? Give them my number. I will teach them how to give you meaningful feedback. But I thank you for this question. So I work with leaders daily who um, don't know how to give meaningful feedback. It's a challenge for them. And many of them think that telling you thank you is feedback. And so I always say the weird and wonderful part of leadership is figuring out what motivates each individual employee because everybody is different. And so leveraging that to create an environment where they can do their great work because you are individualizing your feedback. So the great news is there are some things that you can do to help your leader give you better feedback. So first, I would tell them, what is meaningful feedback to you? What does it look like? Maybe they only give you good compliments, but you want to hear what you're doing wrong so that you can improve and get better. Maybe they only tell you what you're doing wrong, but it's vague and they don't give you specifics, so you don't actually know how to get better. Maybe you like private recognition, but they always give you public recognition. And I will tell leaders all day, every day, if you're not recognizing employees how they want to be recognized, they will not recognize it as recognition. So your leader very well could think that they're giving you good feedback and recognition, but it's not being delivered in a way that you're receiving it. So tell them they will welcome the information of like, this is how I like to receive feedback. Um, Tell them what your career goals are and ask them specifically for feedback around what you can do to position yourself as the best candidate for when the job that you're eyeing opens up. So, hey, leader, the next job that I want to be in is a sales manager. What should I be doing differently to be a good candidate for when that role opens up? Is there anything in my day to day that I haven't done yet or I haven't shown you to show that I would be a good candidate for that? So, ask them for specific feedback um, based on your career growth or goals. If you know there's something that you've been working on, so maybe I have a bad habit of rolling my eyes in meetings when I don't like somebody's idea. And then I get labeled as condescending and rude and not a good teammate. So I've been working on not rolling my eyes in meetings, but saying to your boss, hey, you know what? One of the things that I've really been working on lately is trying not to roll my eyes in meetings. I would love for you to give me some feedback on how I'm doing on that. Is it getting better or are you still noticing me doing it? So tell them specifically what you like feedback on, because that kind of makes it a safe space. Because if my boss, if they don't know I'm working on that, what I can almost guarantee you is they're sitting there thinking, gosh, Shayna's such a jerk and I've got to give her this feedback, but I don't want her to get upset and I don't want her to think I don't value her, but I just want her to stop rolling her eyes. And so they're contemplating the best way to give you that feedback without you shutting down or having a big emotional reaction. And so that's what they're struggling with on their side. So you can make it easy on them by asking them for specific feedback or Yeah, telling them specifically what you're working on and saying, how am I doing with that? Will you help hold me accountable to that? They will love that. That'll make it so much easier for them. And hopefully when you create that safe space where they have given you feedback now once or twice, you take it and you say, okay, yep, I can change that. They'll continue to do it. So I would say own your own professional development, create your own plan, get support from your leader, but take the step to figure it out yourself. So take some ownership in that.
We
All
have
right.
about 8 minutes left.
Gosh,
So
okay.
I know the time went
I
by
think
so
there's
fast.
three more.
Okay,
So
perfect. And if
thank you
anyone
for that.
has a question that they want to try to ask, throw it in the chat and we'll go through the last three and then we'll try to get to any other ones in the chat. But I know, went by
Okay.
so fast, all the good stuff.
Yes, I know. Okay, I'll do these ones quickly. So, how does one effectively manage their 9 to 5 time when looking for a new job while still working their current job? Very carefully, and that's going to look different for everybody. But first thing is to make sure that the quality of the work that you're doing doesn't suffer. Um, you might need them as a reference come at the end of the day, but much of what you need to do can be done outside of work hours. So the self-reflection on what you want to do. Um, Identifying target companies and roles, updating your resume, optimizing your LinkedIn, submitting applications. That all can be done outside of those 9 to 5 hours. And then think about where you have flexibility. So if you need to go to a networking event at lunch, there's local things that you can do. Can you take a lunch break and go to a networking event? Sometimes you might need to take PTO, but that's where you've got to kind of decide what's more important, moving on to a new job or keeping my PTO. So um, I find that when people really want to make the change, they'll find the time. And it's a tough balance. It sure is. How would you make the switch to a different career? Where do you even start? Oh my goodness. Well, as you've heard, I've done it a few times. It starts with figuring out what you really want to do. That's the first step. Find the role, learn the skills, get the certifications or experience that you need to be a candidate for that role, and then create a plan to get there. Um, all right. Oh, this one wasn't even a question. Somebody was just interested in the topic. In mid-career stage and seeking opportunities to transition into a role that complements my skills and experiences. So I hope that you find what you need and you can make that move. So I would say the biggest thing today is in order to write your own story, you have to pick up the pen. And you did that by joining today. This is the first step, maybe not the first step for many of you, but a step towards taking action, creating change, and keep going, keep writing. I will say before we wrap up, if anybody's looking for more support, I did just launch 3 new career coaching programs that started today. Today, I know, talk about a good catalyst to get these going. I've got it's linked on my website if you go out there, shainalane.com. But what I do want to share with you today is for everybody that joined, you can use this code to get 50% off. You got to redeem it by next week, and it is limited to the first 10 people that register. So, no better time than to launch a new program right in the holidays when the holidays are coming up. That's not hard, is it? But I'll be working on additional tools and courses over the next couple of months. Anybody that signs up now, you will have access to those. The program is for a full year from your date of enrollment. So I also offer a 3-month coaching package if anybody wants to get in touch with me around that. And any questions?
This is so great, Shayna. Thank you so much.
I'm like, I did a lot of talking. I'm not used to doing that much talking. And I was like speed talking the whole way. Um,
Yeah, does anyone have questions? Feel free. I haven't seen any come in the chat, but if folks want to unmute as well, we do have about 5 minutes left. Yeah, let's hear any questions you might have. I shared the website and I see your website is on the screen as well, Shayna. So
Thank
I
you.
wanted to share that in
Yeah.
the chat.
Thank you, Susan. So nice to hear you here or see or read your stuff. Yeah. Was that helpful? Is there anything that anybody's taking away that they didn't know? Thank you, Lisa, for poking that or putting that in there about focusing on the growth after a demotion. Yeah.
Yeah, the North Star. Rye mentioned that in the chat. Yeah, that was such a good, and just that clarification of values, I think is so helpful. Like what is, and knowing that that might change in a different season of life, right? That,
Mhm.
what's most important to me right now might not be the
Mhm.
most important thing to me in 5 years. So being open to always be self-reflecting and reevaluating what that
Yeah,
goal or that North Star is. So,
yeah. And I think when you start to feel stuck or unhappy in a job, I think that's a real clear indicator that there's a values mismatch at some point. Maybe the job matched your values at the time, but you've been there for 10 years and your values have changed. And maybe you had
mhm.
young kids then and they're out of the house now, or vice versa. You didn't have kids and now you do. And yeah, things change for sure.
Definitely. Just as a quick plug, we are doing a podcast. We do the Work Like a Laker podcast here at the Career Center, and we have a full episode coming out this season, all about knowing how to clarify your values and find work that aligns with your values. So if you aren't subscribed to the podcast, we definitely encourage you to do that. Um, so yeah, Susan shared about leaning into her network, being curious about what others are doing, finding happiness in their careers,
Mhm.
career CPR.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
analogy there. So
Mhm. Yeah.
awesome. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We so appreciate you taking your lunch today with us to chat about all things career and professional development. Thank you, Shayna, for
Yeah.
sharing. We so appreciate you as well. And um,
Welcome.
Kyle just threw into the chat, we do have some more upcoming virtual events this fall. So we'd love for you to join us in a future event around retirement, financial sense, career. We're doing all the things over here. So please join us. And yeah, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I know we wanted to stick around for a quick
Yeah.
photo. So
Forgot about that. Yes.